Welcome back to RSAC Conference 2025. We're here recording live from the Cyber Risk TV studio in Broadcast Alley at Moscone West. I'm your host, Matt Alderman, and joining me for this interview is Vivek Ramachandran. He's the founder and CEO at SquareX. Welcome, Vivek.
Thanks so much for having me on the show. Super excited to be back again.
Yes. Well, we're going to talk about Year of Browser Bugs, but before we get to the initiative, let's talk the browser landscape for a second, right? So I'm a big app user data guy. Applications, most now are accessed via the browser. What's been happening from a browser attack surface?
That's a great question. So the browser has become the new endpoint, and as you rightly said, local apps are now cloud apps, local storage is cloud storage.
Right.
Also, all identity sits within the browser now, because every single enterprise user uses the browser to access resources. And this is really where, what's been happening in the last few years is attackers are starting to realize that the keys to the kingdom sit within the browser. And the browser has slowly started to become an initial attack vector, which is being increasingly exploited. Now, a big tailwind in this is also the fact that browser vendors have been constantly updating browsers. So now you have newer technologies like WebAssembly, WebRTC, WebSocket, gRPC, and whatnot. And really, this is breaking down existing solutions like SASE SSE, which sit in the cloud, and for the past decade have been happily, just looking at traffic and being able to reconstruct what happens at the application layer.
Right.
They can't do that anymore. And that's the big paradigm shift, is attackers know this, now they are sliding attacks through the browser.
Oh, interesting. So what we traditionally would do is put a secure web gateway in front of my app, and it would catch everything for me. Not anymore.
Not anymore. And the simple reason is secure web gateways were invented almost a decade back.
Yeah. Maybe even a little longer.
Yeah,
Vivek.
probably a little longer. And those were times when browsers were very simple website renderers.
Yeah.
And you could still look at network traffic and reconstruct what is happening at the application layer. But now you have complex UI frameworks. Everything is a binary protocol. Things need to be more real time.
Yeah.
And because of all of this, traffic coming in from the browser is no longer simplistic. You really cannot sit in the cloud, just look at that traffic, which is really flat coming from every browser tab all at the same time, and try to figure out, hey, what is the user really doing here? Is he clicking on a link? Is this a double click jacking attack? Is this something getting downloaded? Because much of secure web gateway technology was looking at the headers to figure out something's downloading.
Right.
But now everything goes through WebSocket. That's a binary channel. You don't know where a file started or ended. You really don't even know that a file is being sent.
Yeah.
And so last year at DEF CON main stage, we spoke about last mile reassembly. And this was really, death by 1,000 cuts for secure web gateways.
Got it. Now, what's lacking in the native browsers that you need something different, right? Because everybody's using Chromium basically through the Chrome ecosystem. Why don't the browsers do this themselves? What's lacking there in the browser technology?
Great question once again. So Matthew, all of these browsers were originally built for just consumers. The whole idea was, let's maximize user experience. Let's make it super easy for a user to be able to onboard himself to a browser and be able to just do what he has to do, right? It was supposed to be for our grandparents, my dad, people who aren't very tech conversant. So by definition, because user experience was the only North Star, there was a massive lack of any form of security controls, because no one ever expected 20, 25 years back that the browser is the enterprise's new infrastructure.
Yeah, it's like the entry to like almost every enterprise application out there.
Exactly. So SaaS apps, web apps, whatnot. And if you look at people in their 20s, they don't even use Outlook Express anymore. It's all just webmail, Office 365.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, we used to have Exchange servers and all that other fun stuff. So what is the initiative around Year of Browser Bugs?
So, I kind of go long back. I've been in cybersecurity 20 years, and HD Moore had started this month of browser bugs, I think 17 years back. And the whole idea there was every single day of the month, they would go publish vulnerabilities in web browsers. But those were software exploits, because back in the day, you could just run a fuzzer and find all of these security vulnerabilities.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So we took inspiration from that, and we said, look, software vulnerabilities has been reasonably in control, but application layer controls being missing there are so many different business logic attacks, browser extension attacks, which you can orchestrate, but they aren't technically a browser software bug.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So that's when we said, why not go back to the old roots, because all old is new now.
Yeah, right.
And let's go ahead and have this whole month of browser bugs initiative. And the whole idea is every month, SquareX researchers are actively finding newer architectural vulnerabilities in browsers in general, and we are publishing it online, telling browser vendors how to fix it, what has to be done. We've already run it for a couple of months. Browser sync jacking, polymorphic extensions,
Right.
browser native ransomware, all of this has been found, put out there, and hopefully this is helping browsers get more secure.
Yeah. So what is like the foundational? Are there a set of attacks that people should focus on first? Like it's kind of the low-hanging fruit of browser security.
Yes. So the lowest hanging fruit at this point in time, because most enterprises don't manage their browsers, is browser extensions.
Got it.
Almost every employee is going and just installing those extensions. And any time that there is, let's say, a new announcement in AI that OpenAI comes up with a new version of ChatGPT
Or DeepSeek.
or DeepSeek,
Yeah, let's go DeepSeek.
attackers are
Right.
putting it out there in social media and saying, if you install this browser extension, we can give you free access to the premium version. And this is causing that frenzy because everybody in the enterprise wants to use these AI tools to summarize, build documents and whatnot. They go install it, and because enterprises don't monitor the browser, they don't even know these browser extensions
exist.
Yes, and in my mind, extensions are akin to untrusted applications of the endpoint world.
Right.
And they have access to everything in the browser. They can read data, session, they can go ahead, hijack, do things on behalf of the user. So it's as good as you've taken over the browser.
Interesting, because we were earlier talking about kind of the evolution of AI, and we talked through bring your own device, right?
Right.
Unmanaged devices was a thing, right? And nobody would let them on your networks until they found a way to manage them, so we evolved into MDM and MAM technologies, right? We had the same thing with the endpoints and in other areas. We see the same thing now with the browser, right? So the browser is now the unmanaged asset in the environment that creates an attack path, a very important attack path because it can get access to critical applications. So is this where the browser security markets is evolving, is because we need to do something to manage these browsers?
Exactly. And the browser is the wild, wild west, and here's another big reason why. We are so used to in the enterprise to be in full control of every application we deploy.
Yeah.
So when a newer version of an application comes, you decide whether to deploy it or not.
Right.
But the browser completely breaks all of these rules. Just remind yourself of the number of times Chrome tells you to update in a month.
I know.
So, which means the applications are changing all the time. As an enterprise, you have zero control. And this is really where what we are starting to see is as attackers are starting to exploit this more and more, enterprises now have a heightened sense of awareness that there's a massive visibility gap in the browser. There are so many attacks which can live and die the entire life cycle within the browser itself, identity attacks and whatnot, and hence it's important to level up and actually have browser native security, which is tools which can natively sit within the browser, secure it, give you that visibility, block attacks right there, dead in the tracks.
Right. So we can force an operating system update, not necessarily force a browser update. And Chrome does a pretty good job of telling you when there is one. Sometimes it'll just do it anyways. But then it goes from green to yellow to red, and eventually you realize, oh yeah, I should really restart my browser. But that leaves a pretty big window for potential attacks to happen, right?
Absolutely. So one is definitely the whole software vulnerabilities themselves.
Yeah.
The other is users just using the browser to just callously flaunt every single policy that you have. I'll give you the most common example, single sign-on. Almost every employee uses that as a convenience feature to sign up on random websites.
Oh yeah.
Because, hey, sign in with Google, sign in with Microsoft. And this
Right.
is really where your corporate IT, your shadow SaaS, is actually expanding its footprint via the browser. And because you have no visibility,
Right.
you really don't know what's happening in there.
Exactly. I think about that now, right? Like, I want to log into this application, just log in via Google.
Exactly.
Boom, done.
Yes.
But what you don't understand as a user necessarily is the potential downstream risk of doing that. And so now you've created a new attack vector.
Absolutely. And I think once enterprise identity leaks to all of those third-party websites, there's very little you can do. Now, I can give you an example of a very worrisome attack. Almost all employees tend to go online and try to find tools where they could upload a document and get a PDF.
Right.
Because most employers don't want to get you a PDF conversion license.
Right, the OCR license, yeah.
So what attackers are doing is they are putting up these ads, and this is all your malvertising, and then targeting specific employee locations by city with those ads, and having you sign in with Google. So now here's what's happening. An average employee goes in, signs up with Google, uploads a document. In that third-party app which the attacker controls, everything just works perfectly, but now the attacker knows your organization, the name of the employee, and what document he just converted.
Right.
And so we are seeing a lot of this.
So do you use that now to create a potential phishing or business email compromise attack, right? Because what you've done is you've given up some data, you've given up the organization, you got a valid email address. Like, can you now craft some really interesting social engineering attacks off of that?
Exactly, absolutely. Because here's what's happened. You signed up on the third-party SaaS app. The attacker has sent you an email to have you confirm your email, which means now all your spam filters have gone ahead and accepted that as a trusted domain.
Yep.
And then most of the time when people create these documents, they want to share it with other people. So many of these tools even have share inside your organization. And that becomes an easy way for an attacker to then laterally start growing within the organization, kind of breaking in.
Yeah.
So this is something we are seeing more and more, is rather than using those plain vanilla broken English spear phishing emails, just use these apps, which everyone in the organization is searching online for.
Right. So what do you, we've got your browser security field manual here, and I need you to sign it when we're done, but how would you recommend an organization to go through and start to build a secure browser environment? Like, what are the steps they should take?
So I think to begin with, start managing your browsers like yesterday. Almost every single browser allows you to do central management, just like mobile devices. And this is something you can do. Chrome has Chrome Enterprise, Edge has the same. Even Firefox and Safari, kind of lend you to some level of remote management. Once you do that, lock down what essentially you don't need. As a simple example, if you're a bank, you probably don't want people installing random extensions.
Yeah.
So immediately lock in and harden the browser. Now beyond that, you probably want a browser native security product to go ahead, give you that extra visibility. SquareX, a bunch of other folks have been building something similar.
Yeah.
And that is really where now you're kind of building that whole layered approach to security, is manage the infrastructure,
so essentially
the browser.
Manage all the browsers.
Yes. Harden.
Limit what you can install, right? Just like if you don't have admin privileges, you can't install software. It's basically the same thing in the browser, right? Just not allow them to add extensions, and then layer in a browser security product. Now, are those products basically browser plugins themselves then?
Yes.
But so, just trusted ones, right?
Yes. So what's been happening is, I think there has been like this whole split between should you have a dedicated browser, or should you go ahead and integrate with existing browsers?
Right.
And what I typically tell CISOs is, look, if browser is the new infrastructure, you don't want to own infrastructure. Because at any point something goes wrong on a website, there is a user experience issue, the security team gets blamed. Instead, if you're deploying a browser extension, you are controlling and securing the browser infrastructure.
Right.
And browser extensions are totally silent, sit in the background, nothing really changes in the main browser. The user experience is identical. So just like you're deploying an endpoint EDR agent, which just runs in the background and secures you, secure browser extensions can convert any browser into a fully secure managed browser, giving you full visibility into what's going on and block attacks right there.
So keep your Chrome, keep your Edge, keep your whatever, Mozilla, Firefox stuff, keep what you're using, essentially manage it, harden it, and then layer in security on top of that. Then you'll have a much better secure browser environment.
Exactly, and the exact analogy I would use is, this is what we've been doing at the endpoint for the last 25 years, right? You want to be operating system agnostic. Regardless of whether it's Windows, Linux, or Mac, you want your EDR just to run, give you the same level of coverage and depth and attack visibility regardless. And this is exactly what needs to happen in the browser space as well, if we all believe in the thesis that the browser is the new endpoint.
Right. So do you call this market browser detection and response?
I would love to call this market that, and SquareX is trying to pioneer browser detection response, and the whole idea is building an EDR for the browser. So if we say we are, a browser is the new endpoint, then you require an EDR for that endpoint.
Right.
That's what we are building.
Perfect. Thank you, Vivek.
Thank you so much.
If you want to learn more, please visit securityweekly.com/SquareX RSAC. Vivek, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Everyone, stay tuned. We have more interviews coming up.